Scott, this is your outfit of summer right here. This should be everybody's outfit of summer. This is the Colby Plus 1.5 millimeter jacket.
Yeah, I've got, I don't have the jacket, but I have the long sleeve spring suit, but I want the jacket. Could you tell Rob to send me over a jacket, please?
I can do, or you can go to Colby Plus, which is COLBY PLUS, and get your own Yamamoto rubber jacket. I just love wearing it. I prefer to wear this than nothing at all, just because it's comfy, feels buttery.
I absolutely love my spring suit and I'm going to order one of those jackets. I need one of those. The water's like 71 degrees down here in San Diego, so it's ideal for the 1.5 millimeter Colby Plus jacket.
Yeah, it's not that warm here, unfortunately. I don't think it's gotten above 70 yet. So that's why this one still has the tag on it, is because I'm waiting, but I cannot wait because I love wearing that thing. So go to Colby Plus. You can get the wet dry bags that we've talked about in the past. They're completely waterproof and airtight because of the heavy duty zippers that they have on them. And then also the wetsuits is really the bread and butter and what they're known for and what we've been wearing season in and season out on colbyplus.com. And then for surfboard needs, go realwatersports.com.
Look, realwatersports.com. I mean, I'm on their website right now. You know, I'm a huge fan. By the way, great interview with Chris Christensen. I'm a huge fan of the Christensens. You can get more insight about Chris from David's recent podcast on Surf Splendor. But if you want to get the Christensen surfboards, you go to Real Water Sports. They've got an incredible collection of Christensens over there.
They had three new models a couple of months ago that they actually debuted through Real Water Sports. So Chris was working on these models for some time and just figured that would be the best way to get them to the masses, just because Real Water Sports shipping and distribution is so vast and efficient. And so it's a great partnership. But incredible boards, Christensen's plus a lot of others, 1,500 boards in inventory, 1,500 boards in inventory, shipped to you anywhere in the world on realwatersports.com.
As we see some movement at the takeoff zone, it's Kelly Slater grabbing.
Yeah, guy. Yeah, friggin' guy, David. Oh my, it is July 30th, the year 2024, perhaps the day after one of the greatest competitive surfing events in the history of surfing competition. Is that hyperbole?
Well, the fact that we've said that exact phrase on this show no less than 10 times makes you think that it is hyperbole, but I would argue it is not hyperbole because it is true every time that we say it, and the bar keeps getting raised, and I am still reeling from the day of competition that was the Olympics Day 3 yesterday.
Yeah, it was interesting, right? Because it was unexpected. I think most of us kind of tuned in. I know I did. I tuned in kind of going, okay, well, I'm sure they're not having it today. Let's just see what's going on. And lo and behold, it was on and it was mean. And it was just incredibly exciting. Only, I think, because of how gnarly it was, there was just a lot going on. It was, I think that's why it was the most, like the best competition we've seen in the history of surfing competitions. Is not only was it 8 to 10 foot chopu, but it had this real girth to it because of the swell period. And it had, of course, that westerly angle, which was unique. Normally we're seeing south and southwest swell when we watch the chopu competition. And this had this incredibly dangerous westerly angle to it, which really challenged even the greatest surfers in the world, the greatest surfers to ride out there. It really was a challenge. And man, oh man, we saw some just death-defying performances.
It was spectacular. So I agree with you. I was not anticipating that. I almost didn't even turn the event on. Actually, I didn't turn it on. I missed the first heat. And then somebody, it might have been you or the first one maybe, who texted and clued me in on what was going on. And it was freight training. It was truly spectacular, mesmerizing to watch. I texted you back and said, I really feel like we're in the midst of maybe the biggest day in surfing ever, because the WSL's reach and the ASP's reach before, it's not as global as the Olympics, clearly. And so I just felt like there's more eyes tuning in now. And day one, day two were lackluster. Day one was pretty good, but not enough to like convert, some middle of America mainstream non-surfing fan. But yesterday was so mesmerizing to watch, and it was so distinctly different than any other Olympic sport, for a number of reasons. Number one, it's subject to weather and swell. That makes it entirely different. But the other thing I was thinking is when you watched some of those wipeouts, there's no other Olympic sport that is so um, perilous in that way. Like if somebody misses a dive, the difference between the first place diver and the last place diver is a little bit more of a splash. You know what I mean? Like a slight angle when they're entering the water. But there's no disastrous, even a disastrous belly flop, which doesn't happen, wouldn't result in death or even being maimed. And so surfing is different that way. There's just all other sports, the worst thing that can happen is somebody slightly messes up. Surfing, it's like surfer can get a 10, or that same surfer can fall 20 feet off of a cliff, essentially into dry reef. So it just creates this really intense, scary, unexpected viewing experience while simultaneously being entirely mesmerizing.
Yeah, we saw some surfers absolutely step up to the challenge in ways that were incredible. I'm thinking of Alan Cleland Jr. I told you that if the waves were huge, he was a real threat. And I don't think, the world realized, the surfing world in general realized, yeah, many of them knew Alan Cleland Jr., who he was from just, he's on the Quicksilver team or whatever. But that kid has got all of the makings. He's kind of reminds me of Jack Robinson. Like he's a guy that should be on tour if the waves were always in waves of consequence. He's a man. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's an incredible surfer, and he really showed how he's got, you know, the chops for chopes, so to speak. And there were many other surfers that we'll talk about that stepped up. But for one surfer in particular, 2024 is a disaster. This surfer stepped away from the challenge that is 2024. It started with a mid Pipeline Masters or Pipeline Pro pullout where he just quit in the middle of the event. And that surfer, of course, is Felipe Toledo. He's our reigning world champion. He pulled out in, again, sort of like questionable form of Pipeline. And yesterday he went on to lose to an ISA surfer from Japan, who's a great surfer, but frankly can't even get on the WCT. Felipe's total score for two waves was 2.46. He had this entire year to build up to kind of wag a finger at the naysayers, such as myself and frankly the entire surf world. It's not just me and you, David. And he failed. I mean, he had an entire year to prepare for 8 to 10 foot chopu, and he simply didn't meet the moment. And not only didn't he meet the moment, he didn't even come close to meeting the moment. And
Well,
it's sad. And I kind of want to get it out of the way because I'm kind of sick of talking about Felipe Toledo, to be honest with you.
so leading up to yesterday, obviously there was day one, which ran in pretty good surf, and he got second place in that heat, and then surfed in the elimination round two on the smaller day. And on that day, he got a 9-point ride. And so I saw a lot of the internet and even Chaz Smith on Beach Grit like celebrating Felipe, because there is a storyline there with everything leading up to this. Like, is he going to face the demon and conquer it? And so him getting that 9-point ride, I saw a lot of people attributing, they were like, that was, he's done it. Like, this is a successful ride at Chopu. But my argument is obviously that was a small day, and he overclaimed that wave so hard. Like, he came out of that thing and did a celebration as if it was 10-foot Chopu. And so I was kind of surprised to see people fall for that, claim, and fall for that score and attribute success to it. Cause I'm like, no, he still hasn't done it. Like this is a cool wave, but it wasn't proper Chopu. And the celebration was so over the top. Like it was offensive to me. I wanted to give him credit for that wave. And then when I saw that claim, I was like, dude, you're blowing it. Like you've lost me yet again. So then, of course, the day of days shows up and he has the opportunity. And to be honest, he has a pretty easy draw. Uh, what's his name? Rio Inaba.
Yeah.
Yeah. Rio Inaba, the Japanese surfer, was going and getting barreled and like, making wave, like
Hey,
actually
he was charging.
he
That
was
first wave he took off on, that was incredible.
totally charging, but ultimately only netted a 6-point heat total. So Felipe Toledo completely, this was the heat that he would want to have. He doesn't want to draw anybody, John Florence, let's say. And Felipe didn't catch a wave for more than half the heat. And then he finally got one, but it was like, he was kind of on the shoulder. He was kind of going for a pocket ride, holding, pig dog stance and dragging his butt, hoping that he kind of got a little bit of shade, except he did it at the wrong moment, right when the West Bowl is kind of bending, and he ended up eating it and breaking his board. So and then he goes and gets another one and surfs it kind of safely. And ultimately, I think he got 3 waves in the course of the heat with a grand total of 2.46, no barrels. But what I saw in that was him learning. I saw that he was kind of making adjustments, making improvements, building up a little bit more courage, starting to get a little more comfortable. But that's all what he should have been doing for the past year. It was like I was watching him learn in real time, but now's not the time to learn. Now's the time where you should be, executing. And you should have been there, like you said, for all year, showing up for swells. And I just didn't see him doing that throughout the year.
Well, his performance or lack thereof is even highlighted further by the performances that were put on by his contemporaries, world champions like Gabe Medina. John didn't have a great heat, but there were so many guys that are his contemporaries that absolutely stepped up. I mean, if you look at the heat lines, the final scores, the low end, the guys that lost were putting in 12s, 11s, 15s. John only put in a 9. But I mean, if your total heat score is a 2.46, that's 2 waves combined.
I know.
And if you doubled that, you wouldn't even get to the next lowest heat. It's just embarrassing, frankly.
Yep.
And
Well, sometimes
I mean, he's
the low
failed to
scores.
seize he had his moment. This was his chance. Like everything was building to this. Like that's the thing. Like he took the year off to have the ability to go, told you guys I can surf 8 to 10 foot Chopu. And not only didn't he do that, like it'd be one thing if he'd lost the heat, but he was gunning for it and he was like pulling into massive West Bowl closeouts. He just failed.
Yeah, he failed to rise to the occasion. He didn't fail at surfing. He failed to even rise to the occasion. So there are other heats where there are, like John's 9-point total, but it's because he was charging and he didn't make it. Felipe Toledo had plenty of opportunities. There was tons of waves coming through. It wasn't like later in the day when it got windy, there was fewer opportunities. But to be clear, Felipe Toledo's heat was the second heat of the day. Super clean, 10-point rides on offer. Simply didn't go. So it is what it is at this point. And I think it's safe to say, like, he's lost us as fans, and he's an incredible surfer in small waves, but it's a shame that the format for the championship tour allows somebody who will not charge in big surf to become the world champ.
Yeah, and it's kind of a fail. I don't know how you feel about this, but this narrative that is the truth that you and I are sort of laying out in front of us is a narrative that the NBC, the Peacock, the Olympic broadcasters failed to deliver. Like when I was
They
watching that
danced around
heat,
it.
I was going, oh my God, this is it for him. It's 8 to 10. It's the gnarliest Chopu competitively that I've ever seen because of that West angle. It was thick and mean. Like this, they could have told this story and they would have had that, wide world of sports moment, agony of defeat, thrill of victory. And that just didn't ever left the ground, that narrative, unfortunately. And I thought that was a huge fail for the commentators.
Well, I don't know that I understand the reason why they didn't is because it feels like you're piling on. Like somebody, if somebody is
It doesn't
incapable of doing,
matter that the lay person that's watching this needs the context for
yeah,
this is your moment. This isn't your moment to like bro down and hope that, you can get a shaka from him at the friggin' Taco Bell in San Clemente next time you see him.
well, no, I agree with you. I agree with you. Just forget about Felipe's feelings or his dad's feelings for that matter. Uh, it's what is the most compelling storyline that's happening, and there's a super compelling storyline there. And actually, um, one thing I would like to, I think a big success of the broadcast of the viewing experience has been the broadcast. I feel like not only the Olympic broadcast itself, but the New York Times, there's been a bunch of other media outlets that are building context for why this event is interesting and worth watching, that I think is really, they've done a phenomenal job. Just like a kind of beginning, middle, and end of this is why they're happening in Tahiti as opposed to Paris. Here's what's unique about this location. It is called um, Place of Skulls. Here's why it's called that. Here's what's unique about this wave. Because I feel like the WSL tries to do that when they go to Brazil. They'll give you like a package of what makes this beach unique in Brazil or what makes this one in Portugal. But to be honest, at the end of the day, those waves look very, very similar. Chopu is entirely different than any other wave on the planet. And that is why it's an Olympic venue. And they've done a phenomenal job of propping that up and explaining why it is. And then all the surfers in the lineup, other than Felipe Toledo, really elevated and rose to the challenge of the wave yesterday. Joan Duru, um, not Maxime Husino, Ramsey Bukhayam, like it was they all elevated. These insane waves are coming through and they are going on the set waves. Connor O'Leary, Ethan Ewing. So I thought I
Yeah.
thought the broadcast was phenomenal.
Well, here was another thing that I know I think will agree with me on is how great the moments of silence were
I
within
know.
the commentary team. It was so wonderful to not have to hear anybody for 5, 8, 10 minutes at a time because there was simply nothing going on. You almost got the sense that somebody in the production staff way up said, "Hey, the first 2 days there was way too much chatter. People were just turning you off because we're just sick of hearing you chatter between down, moments. How about if nothing's happening, don't talk?" And
Yep.
it was super refreshing.
It's crazy, right? Like how have we not learned this in the past? But there is 5 minute interludes with no conversation at all, no talking. And then a set shows up, and then finally Mike Parsons will say, all right, we've got a set on the horizon. And then you tune back in because ultimately none of us are watching this event staring at the screen all day. We're doing other things. We're working, we're typing on the computer. So we don't need incessant banter. We
Uh-huh.
just need to clue in when a wave's coming. And that's exactly what the commentary was doing.
I mean, and it was night and day relative to what we had seen the first 2 days of competition. Like somebody said something to somebody
Yeah.
like, "Hey, calm down,"
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
By the way, let's talk about the good things as we do that regarding the commentators. Gabe Medina, right? He's unflappable. That image of Gabe, which is making the news around the world, um, I'm calling it the cloud claim. It's mesmerizing, right? It's just a great photograph. And he's walking on the clouds. He's got his finger in the air. I'm number one. It's the cloud claim. Could also be called the Jesus claim.
I
Your
think it's called
thoughts?
the I think it's called the gold medal claim. He's claiming number one. So if you live under a rock or you're not on social media, the image came out. It's shot from the channel behind the wave. So it's Gabriel Medina kicking out of a wave and he's levitating. It's just him standing almost perfectly still, like he's posed on the podium, collecting his gold medal. And he's got one finger in the air, almost expressionless in the face. It's not like some big roar. He's just like calm with one finger in the air. The leash, which looks like an 8-foot leash, by the way, is fully extended. And his board is also positioned directly upward. So it's like almost, like his board is leaning against a wall, but it looks so calm and docile and still. But obviously, he's just kicked out of an 8-foot barrel. It's incredible. There's a number of different photographers that got this shot, but the one that's making the rounds is Jerome, I want to say Brouillet. I've never seen his name before, but yeah, incredible. That could be the image of all of the Olympics. I feel like that image will trump any other sport and represent, this 2024 Olympics.
Yeah, great
But
photograph and a great moment.
but his surfing, so back to his surfing, the guy's a machine, I mean, he had Kanoe Igarashi in his heat and they had insane waves pouring through. Gabriel Medina put together a 17.4 total. Kanoa only put together a 7-point total, but there was a wave that came with Kanoa in priority that I think Kanoa actually backed out on. Like
Yeah.
that thing doubled up. It was wider than it was tall, but it was like as scary as Chopu gets, like folding over on itself. Kanoa was in position, had priority, and fully pulled back on it, which is a testament to literally how scary the day was. But Gabriel Medina trounced him no matter what. Gabe was just on multiple waves, making things happen, big 9-point rides. There was one wave that was arguably a 10. I think 2 of the judges actually gave it a 10. Did you have thoughts on that?
It was just mind blowing. When it happened, I told my wife, I go, that's a 10. That's got to be a 10. It's almost like his claim. My wife hated his claim. His
Yeah.
claim was so,
Garish.
yeah, it was so like, what's the word I'm looking for? It was lacking dignity. And
Gauche.
yeah, it was too much. And it's almost like the judges are like, yeah, all right, 9.8. Like it would have been 10s across the board if he just wouldn't have claimed it.
Yeah, and it's again, I don't think that sort of a thing is intentional in their mind, it's subliminal. It just affects them and the way that they make their decision. But I saw Kelly Slater comment on the Instagram of that wave. Somebody posted the Instagram video of it, and Kelly actually gave a pretty insightful analysis. He said it was a near a 10, but there was no foam ball ride. If you watch it, it's a clean line that Gabriel's driving through the barrel, and the judges probably understood that and left room for if there was another wave that was that intense and then somebody navigates over a foam ball,
Yeah.
then that would be an extra element of difficulty and thereby net a 10. So hard to argue with Kelly.
Yeah. Look, I will yield to the GOAT. And it was just such an incredible ride, regardless, 9.8, 10. It was that heat, and Gabe in particular, he looks unflappable. If anybody was toying with the conditions, and I don't think anybody was, he came closest. Gabe came closest. If you were to look at yesterday's competition and go, who absolutely dominated, you would say Gabe Medina.
Yep. I agree. He is the man to beat. My bet going into this for my prediction for who I thought would medal or gold actually is Kayuli Vost on the men's side and Vahini Fierro on the women's side. So both French competitors. And I still feel confident in that because Kayuli looked pretty incredible as well yesterday. But I agree with you. Gabe does have a certain, unbeatable kind of robotic dimension that is you would never bet against.
Yeah, Kauli did look great. And I'm looking at the draw here now. You know who we need to watch out for is this Peruvian kid, Alonso Correa.
Yeah.
He surfed well against Jordy in his first heat yesterday. He's got Inaba Rio as his, like, he has an easy draw in the quarterfinals.
Yeah.
And he could be a dark horse. He could be I don't know, the waves are dying. Like, we don't know what the swell's doing. Things could work out for him.
Yeah, it could be. He's definitely done well to make it to the quarterfinals. It should be stated, maybe we should have started with it, that American male competitors are out. There are no American male surfers in the Olympics any longer. Um, and there's friendly fire too, which is kind of disappointing in the quarterfinals. Two Brazilians are matched up against each other. The two Frenchmen are matched up against each other, and the two Australians are matched up against each other. So it's those three countries plus one Japanese surfer and one Peruvian that are still in contention for a medal.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting and hopefully exciting to see how it all plays out. And yeah,
Joan, I want to mention Joan Duru in terms of the incredible surfing yesterday. I thought Joan was a highlight. Talking about playing with it, there was elements of his surfing that I thought were just a little bit better than others. Like there was a moment, there was a wave that he's pumping through the barrel, and the foam ball is coming up from behind him. He couldn't see it coming, but you could see an anticipation of it because he actually took the weight off of his surfboard. Like in that exact moment, he kind of elevated up and took his weight off of his surfboard, and the foam ball came under it. And it was like he was riding a floater. Like when the foam ball pushed into his board, the board then pushed up into his feet because he had taken his pressure off, and he rode perfectly over the foam ball. Where if he was like fully locked in with like a power stance, it would have knocked him off his board, but he somehow instinctively knew just to kind of let up a little bit. And he rode like essentially a floater in the tube and then came out of it. And so Joan, when you compare that to the Felipe Toledo storyline, where it's like Joan's not in contention for a world title or anything like that, but that level of surfing and commitment and desire out there was incredible to watch.
yeah, I agree with you. And I think from a production standpoint, from a producer standpoint, Joan Duru is the greatest story of the remaining surfers. If he goes on to win a gold, a true Frenchman for the French during the Paris Olympics, it would be unreal. He's 35 years old. When you look at these guys, and I think this is a unique way to look at it, think to yourself, who of these guys are ever going to get to surf in the Olympics again?
Yeah, interesting.
And there's no way Joan Duru is ever surfing. This is it. Like this is his peak ultimate moment right here. And I'm rooting for Joan Duru secretly, or not so secretly. I have him on my fantasy team. Me and some buddies have a fantasy thing going with the Olympics. And I have Joan Duru and Gabe Medina. And you're allowed to pick two surfers. But Joanne's the story. And regardless of fantasy surfer points or whatever, that's the one where a 35-year-old Frenchman wins the gold for his nation during their Olympics. It's a great story. And frankly, it's not a stretch.
It's not a stretch. Yesterday, he had the highest heat total with 18.13, higher than Gabriel Medina's, higher than Jack Robinson's. Joao Chianca actually had an 18.1 against Ramsey Bukhayam, who is also a standout with a 17.8. So Joan, on the day of days, delivered the best performance, arguably. And yeah, it should be in the highlight reels, especially that wave that I was talking about. I had another thought when I was watching it, and that is, we know all these, I guess, other than Alonso Correa. Is it Alonso or Alfonso?
Alonso
Correa. Other than him, the lineup of men in the draw, I knew exactly who they are and how they're going to perform at Chopu, because we get to see these athletes surf in 11 events a year, I guess. So this is just one more. This is a 12th event out of 11. But I was thinking about other sports, and I don't know that they get to see the best in the world from different nations compete against each other than in the Olympics. I suppose in tennis, they are competing against each other regularly, but in other sports, are they traveling around the world on a tour competing against each other regularly? Or is this the one time a year or one time every 4 years where they actually get to see who the best is from around the world?
Maybe golf too.
Okay.
But yeah, I get what you're saying. You could also semi-argue that men's basketball is like that, but not all the guys, compete against each other the way that the surfers are doing here.
Yeah, it reminds me, obviously, that's why the Olympics started, was to find out we've got the best wrestler from one country versus around the world. So let's get them together once every 4 years and we'll figure out who the best in the world is. But with surfing, we already do that. You know what I mean? So this really just felt like one additional event. But because it's at the venue that it's at, and because the swell actually showed up for one of the days at least, this felt elevated above and beyond any WSL event. And that was the other success of the day, was that there wasn't a ton going on. It's like there's only 8 surfers, or however many were left, more than 8, I guess. But there was a very few number of surfers. You can track all the storylines. And I think that was a success of the broadcast for the broader audience, was we know what the stakes are. And they're ultimately just going straight. And the judging is a lot less complicated at this venue on a day like yesterday. So for a general viewer, they created this really clear context of why this wave is so scary and threatening. They see a set coming. There's only 2 surfers in the lineup, and all they got to do is get the biggest one and surf it the most intensely, and we understand who the winner is. It's very, very simple and easy to understand, as opposed to an event in Brazil where there's 32 surfers and there's, fractional differences between scores. So I don't know. It was clear as day to me.
I question whether the surfing competition really gets non-surfers viewership. I just don't think it's that engaging. I think that there's so much downtime that if, you're Joe Blow from Minnesota or Joe Blow from Estonia or wherever, and you're like, oh, let's watch the surfing. And you tune in and there's 5 or 8 minutes where just nothing's happening. You're out. Where you can go
Yesterday,
watch volleyball or something. And
but no, I agree with you. They're not going to watch all day through the 8-minute lulls, but yesterday's viewing created highlights. The Al Cleland wipeout, jumping off of the ledge, Gabriel Medina's near 10-point ride, things like that, where
I'm not doubting highlights. I'm talking about like sitting there and
I
watching the
agree.
event unfold.
No, I totally agree with that. I was just surprised that when I turned on the nightly news, this morning, last night's news this morning, um, there was no surfing highlights. They showed skateboard highlights. Jagger Eaton did a cool trick, I guess. And they showed some other stuff. And I was like, where are the surfing highlights? Because what I witnessed yesterday was far more compelling just visually than anything else in the Olympics.
I totally agree. It feels like a fail. It feels like maybe the producers are like, oh my God, we've got an insane B-roll highlight package for we're going to run the surfing when it's the gold medal heat. And we'll
Yeah,
run
maybe.
that and we'll filter in all this B-roll on how we got here from that incredible day of surfing. And I'm
Yeah.
assuming that's what's going to happen, but you would think that they'd at least go, hey, let's show you what happened. It was a mind-blowing day of surfing. Here's some, boom, boom, boom.
So in the midst of the day, I thought this will be the day that kind of changes everything. The world will see these highlights. Everybody's going to tune in for the following day, that sort of stuff. And the only image that really made the rounds is the Gabriel Medina still shot.
And some of the news stories around the surfing specifically just focused on the surf shot and not even the surfing that took place to get him there. It was like they discussed you know, the parameters of the photograph and how he caught it and when he
Mhm.
caught it and where the photographer was in the boat. Like there was nothing about, oh, by the way, it was the most mesmerizing, competitive, incredible day of surfing in the history of surfing.
Yeah. And we didn't state it yet, but it should be stated. The women did not get to surf yesterday. The schedule is set in advance, so there was no morning call of like, oh, we're going to run them in now that the waves are big or anything like that, which has traditionally been the case. This was all the schedule is mapped out in advance, and the women were scheduled to surf in the early afternoon, but the wind turned unfavorable. Swell was still there. Wind turned unfavorable for the last 2 heats, actually, of the men. And so they called off the women, postponed the event. And it looks like today is going to be postponed as well.
Yeah, if we look at the forecast, we'll be lucky if we can squeeze in a day of surfing on Thursday. That
Okay.
would be great. It would be pretty solid. And then the waves kind of fade away until, I guess they're going to surf 3 to 4 footers again on Saturday or Sunday, and that's going to be it, which is unfortunate because Tuesday, the 6th of August, and Wednesday, the 7th of August, it's 8 to 10 feet again and really good winds, which is just
See if
outside of the window.
See if Felipe sticks around, tries to practice for the next year. Commentary team is phenomenal, by the way. Not only is it nice to have some silence, but Mike Parsons is incredible. Barton Lynch is so I don't know what, contagious. His energy is contagious. Shannon Hughes in the booth is also a delight. I like her a lot. So kudos to everybody. I don't know. Have you seen any of Colin Jost's commentary?
No, I think he's doing little clips on the side. I haven't, and I don't really care to.
It's awful.
Oh, is it?
It's awful, dude. Like actually horrendous.
Yeah.
So I'm streaming the Surfing on Peacock, which is just surfing. They're not tossing back to any, general hub of the Olympics in Paris or anything like that. But I think if you watch the televised broadcast, that's where Colin is, standing on the beach in Tahiti, communicating back to Paris about what's going on. And it's pretty bad, but then he's also doing these little interstitial skits essentially where he is like full comedian mode trying to like make jokes, and it is god awful, like cringe level. Like, I mean, they should have hired Ragland Surf Report or Sterling Spencer or somebody like that. Obviously they wouldn't do that, but it is just a real forced fit. And I think what it was 4 years ago, I think post the Olympics, Snoop Dogg did some commentary on some of the Olympics. Like, I think there was a night show, like one of the Jimmy's nighttime shows, late night shows. And they came up with the concept of let's get Snoop Dogg to do commentary for the Olympics. And Snoop was hilarious. He doesn't know anything about the sport. So he's discussing it from a layman's position, but it was very, very funny. And I think that somebody saw that and was like, you know what we need? We need comedians doing commentary as like a side thing. And oh my God, the Colin Jost thing is just absolutely a forced fit and cringy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that, but
So,
whatever.
sorry for surfing to hear it. The lack of commercials is also great, by the way.
Yeah, for sure.
Like not cutting away. The WSL constantly cutting away is understandable. They got to get paid, obviously, but it's a little bit annoying. And it was a real refreshing to have the lack of that. There was commercials in between heats, but they weren't cutting away and missing set waves as a result,
Yeah. Well, what else do you got, Dave? You know what? Let's take a quick break.
Okay, I do have more, but yes, let's take a break. Rocketmoney.com/surf. Just this week, my wife figured out she was paying a subscription for Showtime, but then also paying for Paramount Plus, which includes Showtime for free. That's precisely what Rocket Money was designed for. A modern tool that meticulously tracks the details that we easily get distracted from. It's a finance app that finds and cancels your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your monthly spending, and helps you lower your bills. It gives you freedom by helping you see your subscriptions in a simple dashboard and alerts you about hidden fees or increases. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has helped save its members an average of $720 a year with over $500 million in canceled subscriptions. Stop wasting money on things that you don't use. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions by going to rocketmoney.com/surf. Calm the clutter in your head, simplify the tedium of your financial life, and find freedom through rocketmoney.com/surf. Well, I thought this week would be a good time to provide some backstory for how this wave found its way into the surfing world. So I've got some history for you, Scott Bass. Tahitian history.
Oh boy.
What or who were the first to ride Teahupo'o at its full strength?
Who were or what? Okay, who
Who were
I'm
the
gonna,
first?
when you say who, do you mean like an individual person or a group of people or
Two individuals.
two individuals? I'm just going to assume it was like Vetea David and Arsen Herho.
Well, Tahitian surfers rode small waves at Chopu in 1985, but Hawaiian bodyboarders Mike Stewart and Ben Severson are credited to ride the first full strength waves a few years later in the late 80s.
Okay, fair enough.
But
I believe that.
by the early 90s, visiting pros began making semi-regular forays out to the what was only known as the break at the end of the road, quote unquote. As seen in the Quicksilver film Quicksilver Country in 1996, world champions Kelly Slater and Tom Carroll rode bravely and stylishly an 8-foot Chopu surf, although the break was unidentified. They didn't name it or label it. The Tahiti Pro debuted at Chopu as the second-tier pro event in 1997 and became a men and women's World Tour contest in 1999. Winners of that contest over the years included, of course, Kelly Slater, Andy Irons, Mark Occhilupo, CJ Hobgood, Bobby Martinez, and Keala Kenley. Now, in the year 2000, 1 week prior to the Tahitian Pro running, local surfer Bryce Tera was caught inside on a 15-foot set wave and driven into the reef. He broke his neck and back in 3 places and died. The first death at Chopu in 2000.
Mm.
Do you remember that?
I thought it was a bodyboarder, but I knew that a local guy had died there.
Maybe he was a bodyboarder. I'm not sure. I looked for images of him and I couldn't find anything. I could only find the stories of it, but no images. And that was a week before the event started, so it doesn't necessarily indicate that it was a surfer or bodyboarder. But Bryce Tera, rest in peace. And then 4 months later, after that, Hawaiian big wave Hulk Laird Hamilton towed into an 18-foot wave that nearly defied description, although photographer Jack McCoy saw the 6'3", 220-pound Hamilton as, quote, a little speck of a human being charging for his life, doing what none of us ever imagined possible, as the wave poured over him like liquid napalm. Hamilton made the wave and then sat and wept in the channel.
Oh yeah, everyone remembers that. That was the Millennium Wave, and luckily I got my hands, I think from Tim McKenna or somebody, I got my hands on the video footage of that. And as the online editorial director at Surfer Magazine, I put it up on our website. And that was like the first big moment for us for Surfer Magazine's website. And I remember being at ASR and everyone gathering around and me going, check this out, pull up our website, and there it is. And it was kind of a big deal at the time. Now it's lost with history.
Not really, though. I mean, that was like the first viral moment, maybe, in surfing. How would that wave compare to what we saw yesterday?
Well, it's still it's still a pretty incredible ride. If you watch it, it's sort of next level for sure. I mean, it was a bigger wave than what we saw being ridden yesterday, I think. I don't know. With Chopu, it starts to get to be, you're sort of combing through, it's nitpicking at some point. It's just all so gnarly,
Yeah, it really is. Well, following that, in 2011, the Billabong Pro, formerly known as the Tahitian Pro, was put on hold on August 28th when a giant southwest swell steamrolled the break for an entire day. The, quote, code red swell, as it came to be known, drew many of the gamest big wave surfers from around the world who proceeded to tow themselves into the thickest, most dangerous barrels of their lives. A wave caught by Nathan Fletcher made the cover of 7 different international surf magazines and won the Billabong XXL Ride of the Year and Monster Tube Awards. And that wave is still being played in highlight reels as one of the greatest rides of all time.
Yeah. Incredible stuff by Nathan Fletcher. Man, oh man.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's your brief history of Chopu, Scott Bass.
You know what you missed there?
Hmm.
The QS event that was the very first QS event that was held there.
The gotcha event?
I believe it was a gotcha event, and Conan Hayes won it, but there was some controversy about who should have won it. And trying to remember the Australian guy's name.
Kobe Abberton.
Yeah, Kobe, exactly. So Kobe, some feel that Kobe maybe should have won it. I forget kind of why the controversy existed, but I do know that that was the event where guys were coming back, like showing up at the Surfer Magazine offices and going, holy shit, like this is next level gnarly, you know?
Mhm. Yeah. I think Nathan Fletcher got a couple of sick ones that day too. But yeah, I remember like I was really kind of just getting into surfing. That was late 90s at that point. And I remember the Quicksilver Country film that I mentioned. I think there was also a photo, an article that came out in Surfer Magazine from that trip as well. And there was the way the wave folds over on itself is just made it distinctly different than anything else. And so it looked different in the magazine, but it also looked pristine and clean. And then when I saw footage of that gotcha event, you realized, because it was a little bit like raining, I think maybe on the final day of that. So it wasn't as clean. And you could see how it was backless. And it was really, again, like the ocean just kind of folding over on itself. It was like, okay, this is an entirely different experience. And by the way, thicker than water. Again, they don't name it in the film, but here's the book that accompanies the film. I'm pretty sure they had a Chopu section in thicker than water as well. Again, on kind of one of those woolly days that isn't crystal clear and clean. But
Yeah.
super scary.
Couple things. I'm sure that Chris Malloy, or one of the Malloys, was probably in that QS event, the Gotcha Pro. Another thing that's sort of that gets forgotten with history as we move through it is how important Chopu was to the big issue of Surfer Magazine. So we had a print schedule where that issue was the May issue. It came out in like April or something like that. And man, those photo editors would just be calling everybody in Tahiti going, hey man, do you have an image? I mean, the Chopu on the cover of the big issue was a big deal. And they would wait until the last minute to go to print, hoping that they would get some magical moment from Chopu that could just sell the living shit out of that magazine and make the cover. And, there was definitely times where they called the printer and said, hey, hold on, we're sending in a new cover,
I don't
and
remember a Chopu cover on the big issue. Was there
maybe,
one that stands out?
I just know that it was like
Yeah,
they were
yeah.
constantly waiting. It was really hard to get it because it was early season. It wasn't quite the season, but it was, and frankly, I just remember there was a lot of anxiety about waiting
Yeah,
on the magazine until the very end in case something came through.
right. Yeah, I remember the Kelly Slater big issue cover from G-Land. I remember obviously the Duke cover, the portrait.
Oh yeah,
Um,
that one
well,
caused a lot of drama.
the Duke one did?
Oh yeah.
Why?
Well, the Duke one was sort of Evan Slater's, and I could be getting this wrong. You should talk to Evan or Chris Morrow about it, but that was sort of their baby. And the last thing the publishers wanted, namely, I won't name who it was because I don't want to throw them under the bus, but they were like, dude, you're putting a black and white photo of a guy standing, you know, we don't want, this is Surfer Magazine. We want youth. We want young. And there was a big to do in the Surfer Magazine offices. It was like a separation of church and state thing where, the editorial guys were like, are you kidding me? This is the greatest surfer of all time. We're putting him on the cover of Surfer Magazine. This is Duke Kahanamoku. And a lot of the publishing and advertising staff is like, he's not sponsored by anybody. How can we put him on the cover? Our sponsors are going to be pissed.
He's sponsored by Surfer Magazine. That's the point. Well, I stand by with Evan because that is that's the cover I remember more than any of the other ones. That was the most memorable one.
Oh yeah, history has proven that that was one of the greatest covers of all time. There's no doubt about it.
I found some of the Teahupo'o imagery from Thicker Than Water, by the way, and it was the closing segment, and it was Conan Hayes once again doing the charging, and there's a quote from Conan right here that says, "I kind of saw the whole ocean jump, and I let go, and I paused for a second, and that's all I remember." So went
That's
into a
amazing.
fugue state. Yeah.
That was amazing. That was really when people were going, "Oh my God, this wave can be surfed."
I know. And we saw it yesterday in the Olympics. Well, my must-see moment presented by Trees Wax, the only petroleum-free surf wax, is Tim Elter's duck dive with no board shorts on, bare booty in the air. He's going to dethrone Alana Blanchard. He is following Alana Blanchard's path to stardom with that duck dive yesterday.
By the way, this brings up an interesting concept. Because my wife had mentioned, she's like, you know what? I really don't like the G-string look on the girls. Like, why don't the guys do that? Like, I don't really want to see a girl's ass. And maybe the guys should do that. Maybe the guys should just start wearing G-strings. Like, like think about it. Like, why aren't the girls just wearing like normal board shorts like guys? Like that
Yeah.
seems more functional. Is it because are they trying to sex themselves up?
Well, there's a lot of history and tradition that I think dictates social norms, so that's probably a large reason why. I think, to be honest, the board shorts probably are not as practical or functional even as some of the more tight women's bathing suits.
Well,
And
what
the women
about like
aren't
what we
wearing
wear? What about like the drift lines that you and I wear, that under the neoprene that's underneath it, like just basically
Yeah,
like biker shorts? Those are totally functional. Why aren't the
totally.
girls just wearing nylon biker shorts? And like,
Yeah.
why are they showing all of their ass to the point that it's pornographic?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
And if they're doing it, why aren't guys doing it? Like,
Yeah, I don't.
these are the questions my wife is wondering. She's like, it's
The
gross. She's
late,
like, it's gross. I don't want to see some girl's ass.
I like that she wants to see the guys' asses though. Like
Well,
that's the claim
it's
that she's
more that
also making.
she doesn't even want to see that. Believe me, it's more that she's just trying to make a statement that it's it's
Sexist.
yeah, it's misogynist, right? I mean,
Yeah,
what are the
look, there.
girls thinking? What's
I
going
don't
on?
know.
What is the thought process?
The bathing suits are not nearly as revealing as they used to be. That should be stated first. And some of them are wearing neoprene, but you're right, it doesn't go down the calf, or it doesn't go down the ham, the upper part of the thigh or anything like that. It kind of cuts off where full butt underwear would. It's not G-string anymore though.
I mean, if it's
But
functional, then does it make sense then that it's functional for the men?
yeah, totally. Well, some of our parts are different, Scott. um, yeah, but I get what you're saying, and yeah, there is a version that would be unisex and suits both, I suppose. But I have no idea. Social norms are the answer to this question. You know what
All
I
right.
mean? Like there
Okay.
are things that are just in place. But the Tim Elter duck dive, have you seen it?
I did see it. Yeah. I mean, I saw it when it was happening.
So Tim Elter, his name came up. You mentioned him out of the blue a month ago. You're like, just looking at the list of names that were included, and you're like, look, is this Tim Elter guy from Germany going to come and win this event? No, we know he's not going to win. Well, then we got listener feedback going, hey, you're missing a real storyline here because he dominated at the ISA games and he beat Gabriel Medina and he surfs good. He surfs big waves good too. Like there's a bunch of Instagram clips of him charging. So Tim was on our radar, but he did not make a big splash at the Olympics due to his surfing. He did go viral though, due to this duck dive where his board shorts got pulled down, I think, on a wave prior. And there was a set coming. And so he didn't have time even to like pull his pants up. So he's like scraping to get to duck dive the next wave.
Yeah.
And the camera zoomed in on him. And when he goes to duck dive, he sticks his butt in the air and he's bare butted, which is pretty funny to me.
All right.
Must see moment, Scott. That's how funny it is.
Well, my must-see moment, presented by Trees Wax, was sent to me by our friend Devin Howard. And it's from the New York Times. And it's about probably an 8 or 12 minute clip. and it's called A New Wave. Are you familiar with this, David?
No.
And it's Michael February. It's a look at Michael February and his father and his mother and what he's doing, his transition, into his role as sort of a mentor for young surfers in South Africa. So it's called A New Wave, and it's really good. I think you'll dig it. And
Super cool.
I thoroughly enjoyed it. And Michael February, jazz man. He's the jazz man.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I will watch it. And I should also mention Devin Howard. I'm waiting for him to pick the winner of our board bag giveaway last week. So I sent him our YouTube video and I was like, hey, there's a bunch of comments on there. Go and pick the winner for the board bag. So he should be doing that. If he hasn't already, he just hasn't sent it to me. And then I will email that person and we will get that board bag to you, the everyday bag from Channel Islands. I have a Duke this week, Scott.
Okay, buddy. Lay on our Duke.
It is the Water Patrol in Tahiti. They were doing some rescues yesterday that were the craziest rescues I've ever seen by any Water Patrol team.
Yeah, it was gnarly. I mean, the John heat, those guys took major donuts, John and Jack Robinson. Like, if you watch one of the John was seriously shaken.
I thought so too.
On one of those.
Yeah.
Like
I've never
pretty
seen
gnarly
John
how
so
long
rattled.
he was underwater.
Yeah. I've never seen John look that rattled, to be honest.
Yeah.
So anyways, the Tahitian Water Patrol team is the Duke, but specifically, you mentioned his name earlier as potentially one of the first surfers out there, which is Vetea David. And Vetea David is the guy who's driving the ski for that heat specifically, and for some of the most harrowing rescues that we saw. And he's got to be one of the best on the planet. So I'm going to give you a little EOS history of Vetea David. Quote, square-jawed power surfer from Papeete, Tahiti, ranked 17th in 1992 and 93, known for his big wave cool and his easygoing Polynesian charm. Quote, watching Poto surf is intriguing, Nick Carroll wrote. He's always slightly off balance, with the art of his surfing in the slashing recovery from somewhere beyond vertical. Like a big cat, he seems to always land on his feet at the bottom, ready for the next section. David was born in 1968 and raised in Papeete. His father was a career officer in the French military, and his mother was from the Cook Islands. David was captain of his local soccer team at age 8 and began surfing at age 10 on a plywood board. David won nearly every contest that he entered in the mid-'80s, including the juniors division of the '84 French championships and the '85 European championships, but was nevertheless a dark horse going into the '86 World Amateur Surfing Championships in Newquay, England, where he defeated Kelly Slater and Nicky Wood, among others, for the juniors title. He was the first Tahitian sportsman to win a world championship of any kind. Meanwhile, back home, David earned money by doing carpentry and gardening jobs. His debut on the World Tour came in 1986 at the Pipe Masters. His rating never skyrocketed, but by the end of '89, he was ranked 22 in the world and drawing attention from the highest levels of surf stardom. Quote, 5 years ago, he was a kook, surf journalist Derek Hine wrote. 4 years ago, junior world champ. Now Vetea David is the biggest all-round talent in his age group, end quote. The regular-footed David had a unique style, blocky and functional, knees apart, chest puffed out, head tilted upward. There was nothing smooth or subtle about his approach, but it contained finesse of a kind, and it was loaded with power. He leveraged his 6'2", 185-pound frame through deeply set turns. He was an anomaly on the pro tour on other levels. He was the only Tahitian and the only French speaker. He had his best run on the world tour during the 90s, placing 19th in 1990, 22nd in 91, and 17th in 92. He won the non-world tour contest at Pipeline in 1992, beating Derek Ho and Johnny Boog Gomes in the final. He finished runner-up to Kelly Slater in the 94 Pipe Masters and competed in the 95 Quicksilver Big Wave event at Waimea. He also won the Coca-Cola Surf Bout in 95 in Sydney. He retired from the World Tour in 97, but continued to enter contests on occasion, finished runner-up at the Big Wave World Championships in 1999, and he won the 2000 ISA Big Wave World Championships held at not so big 10-foot Madeira. In the mid 90s, he introduced tow surfing to Tahiti and eventually launched into some deadly powerful waves. He was later also introduced the island nation to SUP riding.
Okay, there's our Duke Hanamoku, Vetea David.
I will close with a question for you, Scott Bass.
Yeah.
Do you know what his nickname Poto means in Tahitian?
I don't. I'm gonna guess that Poto means bear.
No, it is a slang Tahitian term.
Hold on, I just remembered. There's probably no bears in Tahiti. Maybe
wanna take another?
lizard. Let me try lizard.
Okay. I like it, but no, it is slang Tahitian for young surfer, basically equivalent to Gremmy or Grommet.
That makes sense. Okay.
Poto.
Poto. Good stuff. Well, David, look, we've said a lot. There's more Olympic surfing to come for us here later in the week or in the weekend, and somebody's going to get a gold medal, and should be very fascinating. It has been so far. Until next time, adios and aloha.
All right, Bassy. Driftline.co promo code SPIT is where people can get their drifties and save 15% as well.
Well, drifties, look, you and I love our drifties. I've been wearing mine down here where the water's warm and the drifties are right. They come with a 0.5 millimeter liner of Yamamoto rubber, super comfortable, and adding a little bit of warmth too to the situation. And I'm a big fan.
Chafe-free surf experience is the key as well. Like if you're spending all day in board shorts, playing in the sand, maybe with the kids, going out surfing again, that can get ruined quickly with a bit of chafing and sand rubbing. So having the neoprene prevents that and allows you to stay in the water or the lake or wherever you're at all day and be comfortable. So go to driftline.co and use promo code SPIT to save 15%. All right. Thank you, sir.